Welcome to the Concierge CPA podcast. I have my friend Tyler Clark here today, and he is so similar to me in so many ways. We were just talking about how similar our personalities are and our passions for helping accounting firms and whatnot. And so I'm really pleased to have you and talk through a lot of key topics today. But Tyler and I randomly met on Facebook. We both have pretty thriving Facebook groups. Yours is called
the Proactive Accountants Facebook community. Come check it out if you'd like.
Yes, for sure. And then I've got Accounting from Influencers. So we've done some joint stuff together, and he coaches accountants. Your focus is more on making sure that the initial kind of marketing and sales process is just really streamlined, right?
Yeah, we're big fans on you can't have your dream firm if you don't have your dream clients. And we find that a lot of accounting firms happen to have a firm as opposed to their dream firm. So we really like to start from the ground up and make sure that first and foremost, they're working with the right people and they know who those people are, and ideally get them in front of more of them.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so when did you start coaching? And tell us a little bit more about your background and what brought you to this.
Yeah, so the background piece is kind of interesting. So I like to make the joke of maybe it's a blessing, maybe it's a curse, but there's never been a moment where entrepreneurial accounting hasn't been a part of my life. So my grandfather had an accounting firm in the 70s, and he wasn't a CPA. And for those who are old enough to remember, not me to be clear, marketing by CPAs was not allowed. It was a no-no.
Yeah.
But my grandfather was essentially a modern day bookkeeper, no certifications, just wanted to help small to medium-sized business owners. And he essentially grew $1 million firm in the 70s, which would be about an 8-figure firm by today's standards, accounting for inflation.
Yeah.
And the way he was able to do that was with my father as a dedicated sales rep and a monthly service package for a fixed price, targeting local small businesses. So really
that
pioneered.
Sounds familiar.
Really pioneered some cool topics, or some very what were revolutionary ideas at the time. My father then further fine-honed those in his own firm, started his own consulting firm. I was then born when his consulting firm was also created. And so I grew up around the dinner table talking about literally how to help grow and scale accounting firms. And then I launched my own accounting firm when this crazy thing called the internet came around.
Okay.
Started to use that to gain clients, and then really transitioned into coaching after a successful exit of adding multiple six figures to my firm through primarily internet marketing strategies.
Wow. Okay. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So did you have a specialty in your firm, or were you generalized, or how did you structure that?
Yeah, great question. So I like to say I know how to create a dream firm because I know what a nightmare firm looks like.
Right.
I think we've all kind of gone through that journey of like, just take as, whatever I can get. And there's a certain logic and merit to that in the beginning. I mean, you're cash flow hungry. You don't really even know what a dream client is. And so the first $100,000 that we made was brutal. It was a lot of outbound cold calling because that was the methodology of my father. And I hadn't really developed the digital marketing side yet. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. I'm driving all over South Jersey. Gas prices are going out of control at the time. And I'm like, I've got to figure out this internet thing. That started a kind of a long journey that I'm not going to, go too deep into. But then I realized quickly that not only is my father very patriotic, our head accountant, I'm not an accountant by trade, just to be clear. A lot of people kind of confuse that, but I am not. Our head accountant was a veteran, and I noticed that our best clients were oftentimes had military backgrounds. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up picking veterans as a target market and really positioned all of our branding to be around that. And once we started to make that strategic shift, because it's a very targetable audience, right? A lot of people are very proud to display their veteran status, their veteran programs to help support them. That's when we really started to take off.
So were these veterans starting their own businesses, and that's like kind of the specialty that you honed in on? Oh, I love that. And veterans have such discipline, and they're easy to work with because they're not going to be like behind on all their junk all the time, right?
They're good at following instructions.
Yes. That's awesome. That's a really cool niche.
Yeah, like the light bulb sort of just came, like we were like, wait a minute, these things all line up. And then we were like, oh, and that's such a huge added benefit, because you look at the, old adage, who are the bottom 20% of the clients that are taking up 80% of the resources of your firm? And really driving no profitability at all, and then who are the ones that are really crushing it and following the instructions and making the most out of the advice and guidance and systems. And then we're like, the top percent are these people. Oh, and most of them share this characteristic. Oh, that's interesting. We should just go after that and get rid of the rest.
Yeah. And I mean, essentially, that's exactly what I did in my firm. I identified my favorite client was a local high net wealth guy that had been in, public CEO or CFO, starting his own private consulting business. And us just kind of forming this family office around that, because I loved working with super smart like CEOs and executives and that kind of thing. And I modeled my whole practice around that, and then leading with tax planning particularly, and it was amazing. So I think both of us can definitely say we recommend finding that kind of like niche market that you really can identify with.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like I said in the opener, dream clients got to come first to have your dream firm. I mean, everyone knows what those nightmare clients are and feels like if you've been in the space at all. But actually doing something about it is a totally separate conversation, but it always starts with awareness, and clearly we had the same light bulb go off.
For sure. So how long did you have that firm, and then what's going on now?
Yeah, great question. So that firm was in existence for only 2.5 years, and if I had my way, I would still be doing it to this day.
Really?
And yeah, honestly, I loved it. I loved interacting with small business owners on a regular basis. I thought it was so cool. I love that it's recession proof. It's very profitable. I thought it was very, honorable work. There's just a lot that I like about the accounting business model. Not to mention, there aren't many business models that you can sell very quickly. I know we may talk about the acquisition side of the market later on, but there's just so many inherent benefits to the accounting model. But anyway, the reason it came to a close is, and this is very sad, but the lead accountant passed away suddenly during tax season, and
man,
it was tough. He's a very close family friend. I've literally known him since birth, and so that was very difficult for my father, who was majority owner. I was part owner in it, running the sales and marketing division of the company. And when that happened, he was running 2 companies, and he just kind of said, "Hey, I didn't have the wherewithal to properly pay him out." And I think really the loss of the family friend kind of also made me lose a little bit of love for it in the short term. So we packaged it up, we sold it. Then that's when I moved into more of a generalized consulting model. I hadn't learned my lesson quite yet. I was a general consultant, and then I niched back into the accounting space, given my rich history and successes in it shortly thereafter.
So this passing, the stressors of our profession, a part of this, was it related to that? Because we see that so often in the profession.
One of the things that, and this is obviously a sore topic, and
I don't want to press it too much.
No,
I
it's okay. I
I
understand the context. I work with a lot of clients, but the number of people under the age of 55 that have passed is shocking to me. Like, it's not normal. It shouldn't be that way. And so, not to get into the specifics, but he had some health complications from when he served in a previous war. This guy was like the antithesis of most accountants. He's bubbly, he's happy all the time, he's super excited. Like, he was. Yeah, and then we went in the hospital one day, and just he just didn't come back out. So I wouldn't say it had anything to do with the stressors of tax season.
Okay, the last few years through coaching other accountants, I don't know if you've noticed like how often there's a heart condition or a stroke right around a tax deadline. You're like, there's probably a correlation there. Sounds like this was not that case whatsoever, but I do really get concerned about how hard we're pushing ourselves in this industry and how people think it's an expectation. That's why I really love what you are doing and what people that are coaching accountants and helping them find their dream clients are doing, is because you're getting them out of those potential mental and physical health problems. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters about life.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this one client I have. But it's a great example of what happens when you literally can't work the 60, 80 hour experience because your body something happens, right? And one of my most successful clients, he had a stroke. Runs $1 million firm. Didn't have a stroke but came to me afterwards. He had restructured his whole practice so that he had to stop working that much. So he gets to a 20-hour work week. And through working with us, he's on pace to add $1 million in 3 years, where his first million took him 30 years to be able to develop. And he's doing it on 20 hours a week of work. And so like my point is like, work will usually fill the time you allot for it, and you will usually accept the things that you consider to be acceptable, like taking phone calls or SMS text messages, or letting clients deliver things to you 24 hours before a deadline and tell them that you're going to be their superhero. So establishing those boundaries are critical, and if you don't, eventually boundaries will get solved for you, and that's a very hard thing to like come to terms with. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of my favorite books is Henry Cloud's Boundaries, and then they have the different versions for like leaders and whatnot. But it really hit home with like your own family life and growing up, and you're like, oh wow, there were some bad boundaries there. But then more so like what we get into in this profession and what we allow clients to do and step all over us and whatnot. So yeah, at the end of the day, I kind of feel like coaching accountants is all about helping them establish appropriate boundaries.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's funny because like one of my most common pieces of advice: change your phone number. Right? Because and it's such a hard thing for people to do, but I'm just like, the expectation that people can call you whenever they want and literally reach the thing that's on you all the time. Like we have to change that now. Like we can't let that continue. And when people do it, I mean, it changes their life. Like because they realize they're not on call.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, what are some other kind of more simplistic examples? That's a simple thing to do, but so hard for people to do, right? But what are other kind of more simple things that accountants can do to just kind of really change your
phone number? But the next one is like, disable all notifications on your phone that are not like, obviously if your family, you got to get text messages from the school or your kid, right? Like there are certain ones you have to leave on, but so many of them are just companies being like, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And like, you gotta just like, that's a one and done thing, and you literally never have to think about it again. Another one on your cell phone.
Okay, hold on one sec. Tyler, on the cell phone, I completely agree. One of the best things I've ever done, and ignore the billion notifications and apps I have, but I've got my Gmail app down here and it's kind of blurry, but you'll notice I have no new notifications on my email app. I specifically turned off the notifications on that because I felt out of control, and I couldn't control myself to not open it up as soon as I see a new notification come. So I took back the control and I said, I'm only going to check this certain times a day. My assistant checks most of my emails, and I get all that control back over when and how and why I have to respond to people. And it's so amazing.
Yeah, that's a huge one because they're with us all the time, and you can choose to be productive or you can choose to be a consumer, like creator or consumer. And the more your phone is in your hands, the less you are to create. Like literally, when you think about proactive, like our Facebook community, what a lot of accountants aspire to be more of, or use as a value distinction, that's the inverse of that is react. Right? Like if you're reacting to things, you can't create things. You can't be proactive. And like your phone is constantly telling you to react to things. So you can't enact your vision. You can't like build things that matter when you're constantly on the defense. To that point, and this is another like really simple one, and it's kind of old school, but buy a dedicated alarm clock, because if you use your cell phone as your alarm clock, you wake up with your phone in your hand, and then you literally start your day on like literally on something else's schedule than the schedule that you want to dictate. It's a very small point, but it makes a huge, huge difference in how you start your day, which I like a lot.
Right. I mean, you always have the chance, if you're going to pick up your phone, you have the chance of seeing whatever notifications, and they sneak back in even though you turn them off, whatever. So I really like that. And then you can set the appropriate intention. I mean, studies have obviously proven that first thing in the morning, meditation or setting your intentions or like starting your day off the way that you want to start it is really important.
When we analyze client success patterns in our services, we've identified a bunch of them, but one of the primary predictors of whether or not someone creates a dream firm with our techniques and methodologies, calls a 3-hour deep focus period in the morning. And so what that means is you put your business first when you have the most mental awareness, clarity, and energy. And then after that, you transition into maintenance. You take your client calls, you take care of all your emails, you take care of all the things that you need to do. And to my point earlier about like work will consume the time that you allot for it. Same thing's true. It's like, what if you allocate 3 hours a day to working on the things that matter, and you do that consistently as a daily habit over a prolonged period of time, like you can't even believe the difference your business will have if you just do that for 4 weeks, let alone for a full year.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so yeah, I'm a huge proponent of time blocking and whatnot, but I hadn't thought about saying you really need to dedicate that morning alertness time to that. So what does that 3 hours look like? Is there a specific way that you would allocate that time?
I recently interviewed, I'm sure if anyone can see this, I'm holding up.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. Yes, woo!
Yeah, so I recently won an affiliate contest promoting $100 million leads with Alex Hormozi. For those who don't know, he's a hyper successful entrepreneur, same age as me, but has a significantly higher net worth that's like beyond comprehension for most people. One of my questions that I asked him that I've started to hone more and more in on, and it directly answers like, what do you focus on during those 3 hours? He says, everything we do with all of our portfolio companies and in acquisition.com is based on the theory of constraints. In other words, you have to identify what is the one thing that's preventing the business from growing, and then you allocate all of your resources into solving that constraint. And if you solve the constraint and the business does not grow, then you pick the wrong constraint to solve. And so what we do is we say, okay, there is definitely an order in which things should be done. Constraints for the business, dream client selection, being able to have certain management principles in place, being able to regain your focus in general, get to inbox zero principle so you're not constantly like freaking out over 100 unread messages, whatever. And so like once you clear off all like the basic ones, and then it becomes somewhat of an amorphous question that the owner has to be able to answer of like, what's the biggest constraint facing my business? And usually it's either we don't have enough lead flow, we're not converting people at a high enough price or frequently enough, or we bottlenecked ourselves and we need to go and hire and train and manage new talent. And so when you just break it down between those three categories, you just go attack that thing exclusively. We need more leads. Okay, we need more marketing. Okay, we have a bunch of leads, but not enough people are buying. Our sales process sucks, right? Or like people are buying, but we're not profitable enough. Our pricing strategies suck. Okay, right? Like we've got a bunch of people buying, and now all of a sudden we're like, things are falling between the cracks. Our CRM sucks. We have the wrong people hired. They have the wrong incentive structures. And you just got to keep zeroing in on whatever the problem is until it's solved.
Alex's first, I believe it was his first book. What was it called? $100 million
offers?
Offers, yes. So I read that about a couple years ago or maybe a year ago. I don't know. I had realized as I was listening to that book on Audible that the concepts were things that I naturally and organically started doing in my own CPA firm at Meyer Tax that I didn't realize like really made this insane difference, right? Like offering a guarantee or making it like, what does he call it? Making it so easy that you can't say no, kind of dumb offer, right? And so I highly recommend that book for any entrepreneur, but especially for accounting firms. I even reached out. I think I told you, Tyler, I tried to reach his group about a like 100 million offer for accountants book and got no response, but who knows, someday, maybe through you and my other connections, we'll make something happen.
Yeah. I mean, the book is fantastic and the principles of it are really, really excellent. And just on the point about like a guarantee, I find a lot of accountants are very hesitant to like offer that. But when you look at it just purely from a risk analysis perspective, like when you're selling a service, you're asking the other person who's buying to take all the risk because they really don't know if you're going to deliver it all. They just,
right.
They don't know. And when you're just like, I'm going to put in writing that like, if this thing happens, this will be the recourse, or this is what we're going to accomplish. It makes selling a lot easier. And it's not so much that you're like, if anything, you're not over promising, you're just promising exactly what you want to do. And you're being ethical and being like, if it doesn't happen, this is what I'm going to do back. And when I ran my firm, I came up with this one guarantee, and it generated me more business than literally anything. Because when you were, oh yeah, for sure. Because there's only two types of people you talk to. There's people who've never had an accountant before, right? They need help. And there's people who have accountants and they're either looking to switch or they just got rid of their accountant. And if they got rid of them, it's usually lack of communication or there was some error that they felt was the fault of the firm. And so the guarantee that I came up with, because I kept having the same conversation over and over again, which is like people would get hit by penalties that they felt weren't their fault, that were the fault of their other firm. And then they'd be like, but how are you going to be any different? And I was like, just trust me, bro. Is it like, surprise, that doesn't really work, because that's what they said.
Okay. So that would, in today's language, that would be brah, right? Like, trust me, brah.
Yeah, trust me, brah. And so finally I was like, all right, if I put it in, and finally I was so ticked off because it happened like 3 sales calls in a row. And I was like, if I just put it in writing that we'll pay for any penalties if they are our fault, will you sign up? And the guy was like, absolutely. And I was like, that was like the easiest, like that was so easy to say. And I was like,
I love
and we
it.
would do it anyway. We were already willing to do that.
Exactly. And it's so you're just setting clear expectations from the beginning, just like setting clear boundaries from the beginning is so important. And you're just telling them up front what you are willing to do. Like, are you an ethical person? If something is your fault, are you going to take care of it? Of course. Right. So I always say, like, I can't guarantee your tax savings. There's obvious things I can't guarantee, but I can guarantee your satisfaction. And I can guarantee if something is our fault, we're going to make it right. And that tends to be all I have to say, but it's also in the e-engagement letter, right? But I mean, I think it's important to have that kind of guarantee. I think that's neat that you did that.
Like when you make a guarantee no one cares and no one buys, you're making the wrong promise, and then you shift it to another one, and then all of a sudden you'll see a result.
For sure, yeah. Anything else from his books that you're like, oh my gosh, accountants need to do this ASAP?
I mean, I could spend
everything.
A long time on this, but literally everything. But there's one thing in particular, and for a long time I was confused, maybe frustrated or annoyed. There's almost like this micro cottage industry of consultants, specifically in accounting, exclusively talking about one topic, and it's pricing. And I was like, I don't understand the people who have access to finances and numbers and understand profit margins probably better than anyone, why they need so much help on guidance. And so again, like the market will keep telling you things, and one of my favorite principles in life is life will keep teaching you the same lesson until you learn it. And so finally I learned, like, as strange as it is to me, clearly they need help with this. And there's a fantastic graph in this book, $100 million offers, that specifically talks about the importance of premium pricing and what it does to perception of value. People are less demanding when you have a premium price. Mm-hmm. Your ability to deliver a premium product and a premium experience goes up. So there's all of these benefits. And like, just like looking at that graph, like I feel like so many light bulbs go off for accountants. We literally put it, like I take a snapshot of it, I put it in our program. I'm like, look at this, like study this. Like, you want these things, and it's 100% true, because if you're in the, less for more space, it's a bloodbath. Ain't nobody happy in that space. I promise you, no one is living their dream life or having a dream firm in the less for more space. It is brutal, it is competitive, and you're dealing with the worst type of people, and a high price weeds out crappy clients. That's one of the defaults of what it does. So anyway, that to me is a huge takeaway, and I think I could summarize all pricing guru conversations into literally just that point.
Very cool. Okay, yeah, I'll maybe try to include that graph or whatnot in the show notes, because that sounds pretty cool. Or just go read the book, go grab the book. It's everywhere. So lately, you've had this thriving Facebook group. You also have been growing your YouTube channel, which I've been just started trying to do as well. It's quite painful. What is your YouTube handle, and what kind of content are you throwing out there?
Yeah, so at Dream Firms, we basically I try and give as much high quality information away for free as possible. If you like what I say on this podcast or on the channel, it's usually a good indicator that you'll like working with us at a higher level. Mm-hmm. So really, it's kind of just a try before you buy, if you will, type of channel. I really try and hold nothing back. If you guys engage and drop comments and want to talk about certain topics that I haven't addressed yet, I love that stuff. But yeah, YouTube's a tough channel or a tough social media platform to grow for sure. You got to take your licks before you get to your first, couple hundred subscribers, and then it starts to snowball a little bit. But yeah, it's tough.
You mentioned a goal that you had 1 billion of new wealth for clients by 2034. And something even more profound you mentioned is that it took your father 30 years to do that. How did that come about as your goal, and why is that so important to you?
I believe if you put the client's results ahead of your own, then everything else will take care of itself. I'm very much a product-driven individual. I want our thing to be as good as it possibly can be, and it's always going to be an evolution. So yeah, that's the mission, 1 billion in new wealth for clients generated by 2034. And the vision is to be the place for entrepreneurial accountants committed to creating their dream firm, which is, you're never done doing that. Like, that's always an evolution of our experience, our community, our services, everything that we do, our software as well. And so, yeah, I mean, the goal is to just keep growing dream firms. And my father, I want to beat, he has a client that does like from startup to, I think it's like 13 million annually or something like that. So I need to have a client that beats that for sure. And the thing is that, yeah, so that's one thing. And then I need to, of course, eclipse his top line overall client growth.
Okay. So you're a little competitive with your father. Okay. Gotcha. And so he actually helps, buy and sell firms. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So once, problem with a lot of brokers is not a lot of trust, but the guy who helped you build it, they trust him a lot, and he's got a lot of experience in negotiations for buyers and sellers. But yeah, that's what he does. New Clients Incorporated, for anyone who wants to go check that out.
Yeah. So I'm curious, before we hop into the valuation side of things, why 2034? What's significant about that year?
10 years from when I just kind of said, this is the mission. Like I was basically challenged by a couple of, thought leaders of, what is it that you want to be able to like stake your flag in and say that this is what we've done? Like, how are you rallying your team? And, originally it was 100 million. And I was like, that doesn't sound that hard. That's only like 10, like we already did that in the last year.
Yeah,
like, that's not hard. So we need to be able to like significantly magnify this.
Love it. Yeah. I mean, you got to start somewhere. So I think I might kind of model after you. We had thought about the top line revenue of like Tax One IQ, but more importantly, we just recently pulled statistics that we've saved over like 250 million in taxes through Tax One IQ and helped like 20,000 taxpayers. Yeah, go us.
Yeah, that's so cool.
We should set it as like 1 billion in tax savings or something. So yeah, I'm gonna have to take that to my team, and we'll talk about an EOS and all that jazz. So yeah. What are you seeing with the market right now? I personally have noticed, I sold my own firm last year. I sold for 1.5 annual revenue, which I thought was on the high side. But then of course, private equity started coming in and grabbing people for even more than that sometimes. What are you seeing with how people are selling their firms right now?
Yeah, so there's kind of like 3 layers to this. There's what I call like the dead zone. And the dead zone is the solopreneur accounting firm, maybe like a VA or an admin person. I have some intimate knowledge of this from my father, but people will work themselves to death, and their family is sort of hoping or relying on that sale, and then the person dies at their desk, and then that person who's kind of like running some portion of the firm very quickly goes and gets another job, and so they don't even have a chance to sell. And again, like when I say like the dead zone, like if you don't have legitimate processes and systems in place, as well as end of life, like potential, like you got to get a broker on the phone immediately, because within 30 days that asset is going to zero and you'd be lucky to get pennies on the dollar. So that is just like a shot across the bow for anyone who hears that feels even remotely close to a situation like that. Like, get your house in order, please. It's very, very, very sad when that happens, and there's very, very little a broker can do, even if they try and come in and do a fire sale. Second category is going to be that multi-6-figure, some decent staff in place. You're going to be in that kind of like 1X area. Sometimes you're going to need to do some sort of like seller financing, maybe have the heir apparent in place and do some sort of transition to someone who's, competent and wants to take over the business. And then the third category is the 1.5 to 3x category that you were just part of, Jackie. And the reason I say 3x, and this is my evolved version of what a dream firm is you should be a target for PE. My father is having PE companies contact him like at an unbelievable rate right now, because they know that accounting as a service is great cash flow, great LTV. They can arbitrage a ton of value out of it because they're usually relatively poorly run in terms of like owner operated. They don't have a lot of leverage. They don't have a leadership team in place. They have kind of bad pricing. And so they know that they can come in and make those profitable, even if they pay a premium. So you see anywhere from 1.5 to 3x for a really well-run firm. And when I say a really well-run firm, I'll just share another story from my father's archives, and also, from my archives as well. When I talked about the gentleman who had the stroke and works less than 20 hours a week, one of his most successful clients was a guy by the name of Dwayne Gravely. And Dwayne had a sign on his door that said, "Dwayne does no work." Like literally, like the guy was the owner of the firm and he would work 10 to 15 hours a week if he felt like it. And so he ended up developing this whole process of how to efficiently, and he was running a multi-million-dollar accounting firm. So that's like when I say that these things are possible, it's just a matter of knowing how to put it in place. Like you can't put a price tag on the value of the knowledge that takes you, because just imagine this, right? You're running a $500,000 firm. You put in the right processes and systems and team in place that makes it a legitimate target for PE. And usually they're looking at 7 figures and above, but even still, let's just imagine it goes from a 1x or potentially 0, depending on how poorly it's run, a 1x, and now it's worth 3x. And you could make those changes in 6 months. You could make that, and you go from a $500K windfall to a $1.5 million windfall. And obviously the numbers only get more ridiculous the larger the firm is, because percentages and all that. But so yeah, I mean that's typically just like the landscape right now, which is accounting firms are going to continue to get rolled up. And if you consider integrating financial planning into it, I mean those are bonkers. I mean, financial planning businesses sell for 8x compared to accounting firms that are lucky to sell for 1x. And 3x, again, that's my point, is like,
yeah,
PE's happy to spend the 3x because they know, hey, financial planning's worth 8. Yeah, accounting's more labor intensive, but predictable cash flow.
It's so important to have mentors, a board of some sort, coaches that have different experience than you, because people think that I probably, I'm doing all these things, blah, blah, blah. I still have these self-limiting beliefs around having a sales department at Taxman IQ, and now we're talking about getting regional sales directors. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never done this in my life. This is so over my head. But this strategic advisor I hired is like, this is the next step. This is how we're going to go, and double the revenue of this company. And so the same thing happened when I sold my firm, even though I didn't necessarily get in on the PE thing, which is probably okay because I would have rather sold to my friend. I went to them and, kind of a board and said, hey, here's what it's looking like. A typical accounting firm sells for 1 times annual revenue. They're like, what? That's horrible. I'm like, huh? And because they're all in different industries, right? And they're like, that's really bad. You should definitely ask for more than that. And I was like, okay, maybe 1.25. And they're like, no, that's really bad too. So I ended up going with 1.5, which I thought was really good at the time. I'm pleased with how it all worked out for me, but like just not knowing what you don't know is so detrimental to these firms and these smaller firms. And so that's why I have like 7 coaches always at the same time, and mentors and board members and that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm sure it's changed your life a lot too, in regards to just having people that are pushing you to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you're exact. The things you don't know cost you the most amount of money. It's the moves that you could have made that you didn't even know existed that, again, cost you the most amount of money. And one of my favorite analogies, I think a lot of people go, I can learn tax planning strategies on the internet. I can Google this, or I can learn marketing or sales, anywhere. And in a certain sense, that's true. But in the information age, it's not yes, everything we have to teach and say is available for free in some format, one way or another, 100%. However, what we get paid for, both as an accountant, as a coach, as a software provider, we get paid for the same thing, which is two things. How we package information so you don't have to waste your life, your time, your most precious resource, Googling your life away for things that may or may not be exactly what you're looking for, and to pay attention to you and your specific situation and make sure you get access to the right types of information for where you are in your journey. And so a lot of coaches, the reason that they get paid what they do, or the reason that they create the results that they do, isn't because they're sharing anything that's revolutionary, but they're able to hear where you are and they're able to apply a very specific experience or situation that opens up a new idea or pathway for you to be like, oh, wait a minute, I should go down this path and not down that path because this path is worth 0.5x more for my firm if I just simply set that as the price, and all of a sudden it's something that's more than possible to get because I don't need to be the norm. I have something that's exceptional. I just didn't even realize it. And that applies in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to go through thousands of experiments to get a working light bulb. You go down to Home Depot and you spend $1 and you get a working light bulb. You don't have to spend that same level of time and money. And that's the same thing for what we do, is like we shortcut the time it takes to get the result that you want.
I still remember, I have a horrible memory, but I still remember this day, the first coach I hired in my CPA firm, it was like $8,000. It was like the most expensive purchase I'd ever made in my life. This was like almost a decade ago. And I went to my husband and was like, this is a big deal. Should I do this or not? And he's like, no, don't do it. And then I did it anyways, which is kind of the theme of our marriage. But, and it was the best decision I ever made, because through that coaching relationship, I transformed my firm into the one of my dreams. And I would have never been able to do that on my own, no matter how much research or how smart I was on my own, right?
I have almost an identical story, just like ridiculous amount of money, was frustrated in some way, shape, or form with my life or my business and felt like someone could help me. Mm-hmm. And it's transformational when you put a large amount of money that makes you uncomfortable and forces you to do the work and listen to the person. And then all of a sudden you go and get the results. I mean, it's not complicated, but it is definitely an uncomfortable thing to go through.
Okay, well, I wish we could talk all day. Maybe we'll do another session soon, but we are coming up to the top of the hour, so I'm gonna let you go. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want more information?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got a couple avenues here. Obviously the website, just dreamfirms.com, exactly the way it sounds. We've got the Proactive Accountants Facebook group. I do some free coaching and training in there, essentially like on a weekly basis. And then we also have our YouTube channel, again, just Dream Firms into Google, and you'll pretty much pull up all of these things instantly. And we've got, I don't even know how many videos on there, but they cover a range of topics, from pricing to guarantees to selling to marketing strategies to software. And yeah, so I mean, those would all be fantastic ways to get a little bit more familiar with who we are and what we do.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Tyler, for your time today. It was really fun to interact. I think you brought a lot of really significant nuggets to the table for a lot of people. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jackie.
This episode of the Concierge CPA was brought to you by Tax Plan IQ. Elevate your accounting practice, bring unparalleled value to your clients with this exceptional tax advisory software. Your journey toward becoming a tax advisor starts here.